Chapter 1151. The three sacred beasts came at him from three different directions. Qin Feiyang had nowhere to run. But Qin Feiyang had no intention of dodging. He stood firmly in the air and glanced at the three sacred beasts. Crimson sword energy surged and three sword shadows appeared. They slashed at the three sacred beasts with an apocalyptic sharpness. Naive. The three sacred beasts sneered. Not only did they not dodge, but they also charged at the sword shadows. Clang. The three sword silhouettes slashed at the three beasts in succession. However, what happened next made Qin Feiyang flabbergasted. The sword shadows were invincible. However, when they slashed at the three sacred beasts, they did not cause any damage. They only cut off some of their hair. How is this possible? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled and were filled with disbelief. At the same time, the three sacred beasts attacked Qin Feiyang with their various abilities. Fart. Qin Feiyang spat out a mouthful of blood. He crashed to the bottom of the cave like a meteorite. His body was in unbearable pain. Although we are only 6-star battle saints, our physical bodies are still in peak condition. With your cultivation, even if you use a perfect battle art, you won't be able to hurt us at all. The sacred lion sneered. That's right. In front of an ant like you, we are like gods. We have immortal bodies. The sacred eagle laughed. Its pair of snow-white sharp claws were like deadly bone claws. They swiped at Qin Feiyang's head. Peak physical body, Qin Feiyang muttered. He stood up abruptly and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The Chang Shui appeared and slashed at the sacred eagle. Ah! The sacred eagle let out an anguished wail as its pair of sharp claws fell down. How is this possible? He can actually cut off the sacred eagle's claws. The white-robed man, the sacred lion, and the sacred python looked at the howling sacred eagle in the air. Their hearts were in turmoil. That's all there is to it. Qin Feiyang laughed. With the Chang Shui in his hand, he charged at the sacred eagle like a human-shaped dragon. I'll end your life first. Chang Shui was as white as jade and exquisite beyond compare. It was like a masterpiece from the heavens, but its sharpness was bone-piercing. A trace of panic appeared in the holy eagle's eyes. Don't even think about it. At this moment, the white-robed man, the holy python, and the holy lion roared at the same time and charged toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang coldly snorted and threw out 3 palms. Golden light burst out from his palms. Return formula. 1 man and 2 beasts were sent flying on the spot. The sacred python and sacred lion were better off. After all, their physical bodies were strong. However, the white-robed man's face turned pale as blood gushed out of his mouth. Qin Feiyang, is this all you've got? He stood awkwardly in the void, staring coldly at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's nothing to be surprised about. After saying that, he took a step forward and continued to attack the sacred eagle. Ha ha, the man in white raised his head and laughed maniacally. Suddenly, he lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyang and laughed sinisterly. I'm sorry, but what you see of me is just the tip of the iceberg. Qin Feiyang frowned, stopped in his tracks, and lowered his head to look at the white-robed man. It's time to let you know my true cultivation. The white-robed man licked his lips, and his aura soared. 7-star battle saint, 8-star battle saint, 9-star battle saint. In the end, his cultivation had actually forcefully broken through to 1-star battle emperor. What? Qin Feiyang turned pale with fright. Qin Feiyang, wake up. The white-robed man's long hair fluttered in the wind. Like a demon god, he instantly rushed in front of Qin Feiyang and slapped his palm on Qin Feiyang's chest. Puff! Qin Feiyang flew out horizontally and slammed into the stone wall. His entire body immediately emitted a heart-wrenching pain. He lowered his head to look at his chest. His chest had already caved in, and his flesh and blood were a mess. Even his heart had been split open. If he had not activated the battle formula, this attack would have killed him. Did you see that? This is true strength. Your cultivation is nothing. The white-robed man laughed as he stepped on Qin Feiyang's face with an arrogant expression. Powerful. Really powerful. I didn't expect there to be so many hidden powerhouses in the spiritual state. I was really ignorant in the past. However, Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold, and a mighty dragon's aura roared out from his body. If you want to kill me with just this little bit of cultivation, then you are gravely mistaken. Emperor Prison! Qin Feiyang roared, and the purple gold dragon soul roared out. Immediately, the entire stone cave turned into a prison. The holy eagle, holy lion, and holy python were all imprisoned here. The white-robed man was also shocked and quickly retreated. He raised his head to look at the purple gold dragon soul, and his eyes were filled with shock. Qin Feiyang slowly stood up, and dragon blood splattered and stained the ground. He swallowed a heart protection pill and coldly stared at the white-robed man. Is a one-star combat emperor very strong? I will kill you all the same. It doesn't matter. The white-robed man shrugged. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang frowned. Looking at the white-robed man's calm expression, an inexplicable sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. Because we have been planning for so long, and we have been waiting for this moment. The white-robed man chuckled. With a wave of his hand, a wave of battle aura appeared. However, this battle aura was not directed at Qin Feiyang, but at the purple gold dragon blood under Qin Feiyang's feet. At this moment, Qin Feiyang was standing in front of the snow python's head. With respect in his eyes, he cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, senior." The snow python slowly opened its eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang. It asked suspiciously, "Why are you here again?" Qin Feiyang said, "Junior came to ask, before Junior came, did anyone else enter the Forgotten Continent?" "No." The snow python shook its head and asked in confusion, "Why do you ask?" "No." Qin Feiyang frowned. From the snow python's attitude towards him before, the snow python shouldn't lie to him. But other than the Forgotten Continent, where would Mu Qianyang go? Could it be that he really went to the imperial capital? Or could it be that he had guessed wrongly from the beginning? The person who killed the golden-armored man wasn't Mu Qianyang at all? The snow python looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and asked, "Did you encounter some trouble?" Qin Feiyang said, "I wonder if Senior has heard of Mu Qianyang." Mu Qianyang. The snow python's pupils constricted, and it nodded. "The emperor of the Qianyang Empire, of course I know. His back." Qin Feiyang said word by word. "What?" The snow python's expression suddenly changed. "Qin Feiyang, I know you're down there, get out quickly." At this moment, an angry shout sounded from above. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the snow python. "Senior, I'm sorry, I'm going to meet an old friend." The snow python nodded absent-mindedly, as if it was thinking about something. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang broke through the waves and flew out of the ice lake. He saw a familiar figure standing in the void above. Who else could it be but Mu Qing? When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. At this moment, Mu Qing clenched his fists and his eyes turned red. He couldn't wait to tear out Qin Feiyang's tendons, peel off his skin, and crush his bones into ashes. Qin Feiyang glanced at him indifferently and then looked around. Mu Qing said, "Don't look around, I haven't had time to inform father and the others." "You dare to come to me alone?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Why not? I don't believe that you dare to kill me," Mu Qing retorted sarcastically. Before his voice died away, Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of Mu Qing in an instant. He grabbed Mu Qing's neck and sneered, "Who gave you the confidence?" However, Mu Qing was not afraid. Instead, he asked with a mocking expression, "Mu Tianyang is back, right? How do you know?" Qin Feiyang's expression changed. Mu Qing said, "Although I'm not in the Great Qin Empire, I can sense everything about Mu Tianyang." "You can sense it?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Mu Qing said, "Haven't you always wanted to know the origin of the Mu family? Now I'll tell you, the Mu family is the descendant of Mu Tianyang." Sure enough, Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He had thought of this a long time ago. However, he did not dare to make a conclusion because he could not find any conclusive evidence. "I know where my ancestor is now and what he's going to do next. If you kill me now, no one will tell you this. At that time, you'll be like a headless fly, running around the world without any harvest. Don't think of using the slave seal to control me. I'm not Yang Wei and the rest. Threats and promises won't work on me at all." Mu Qing sneered. Qin Feiyang's face was as dark as water. Indeed. If it was someone else, he had many ways to make the other party speak the truth. However, he was not confident about Mu Qing. Qin Feiyang said, "What do you want?" "Divine crystals. And the space-time gate," Mu Qing said in a deep voice. "Space-time gate?" Qin Feiyang frowned. What did he mean? Wasn't the space-time gate in the hands of the Mu family? Why did he ask him for it now? Looking at Qin Feiyang's expression, the anger in Mu Qing's heart could not be suppressed. He shouted, "Don't play dumb with me." Qin Feiyang said, "Why should I play dumb? Tell me clearly." Mu Qing said in a deep voice, "Do you remember that day when you escaped from the inland sea and wanted to return to the Great Qin Empire? My ancestor chased you here." "I remember." Qin Feiyang nodded. "It was at that time that the space-time gate in my ancestor's hands was snatched away by the damned snow python under the ice lake. You were there at that time, and you still say that you don't know?" Mu Qing roared through voice transmission. Qin Feiyang was stunned. There was such a thing. This did exist, but because it happened after he left, he only knew about it now. Qin Feiyang asked, "Is it the real space-time gate?" "What do you think?" Mu Qing said angrily. If it was just the fake space-time gate, he would not be so anxious. "Ha," Qin Feiyang laughed. This was really something to be happy about. Seeing Qin Feiyang laughing at his misfortune, Mu Qing's face became more and more ugly. "Don't think about the space-time gate, because I don't have the ability to get it back from her. As for the divine crystal, it's not in my hands now. If you have the ability, go and ask the mysterious madam for it." Qin Feiyang said lightly. Mu Qing shouted, "All of this happened because of you. Shouldn't you be responsible?" "Responsible? Are you kidding me?" Qin Feiyang's face turned red. Wasn't this too funny? Such a smart and capable person actually said such a childish thing at this moment. It could also be seen how helpless Mu Qing was now. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he asked, "Did you just come from the Central Divine Kingdom?" Mu Qing nodded instinctively. But as soon as he nodded, a strong sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. He looked at Qin Feiyang warily and said, "What do you want to do?" The space-time gate was stolen. Everyone in the Mu family must be very sad, right? So, the fake space-time gate on you can't be kept. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Mu Qing's eyelids twitched, and he said in a deep voice, "Why? Haven't you heard of the saying that seeing an object hurts the feelings? Seeing the fake space-time gate, you will definitely remember the real space-time gate. So, why don't you give it to me? I promise you that I will cherish it." Qin Feiyang smiled mockingly and snatched Mu Qing's Chenkuan bag. Taking advantage of people's difficulties. Shameless. Despicable. Despicable. Mu Qing cursed angrily. "I'm doing this for your own good. Why can't you understand?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Then, he sank his mind into the Chenkuan bag, but he didn't find the space-time gate inside. He frowned and looked at Mu Qing's lower abdomen. Although the fake space-time gate was only a divine artifact, in terms of practicality, it was not inferior to some divine artifacts. Such an important thing should be in Mu Qing's sea of qi. Looking at Qin Feiyang's fiery eyes, Mu Qing panicked. Puff. But Qin Feiyang didn't show any mercy. His big hand was like a blade, directly tearing the flesh on Mu Qing's lower abdomen. He reached into his sea of qi and grabbed the fake spacetime gate. I won't let you have your way even if I die. Mu Qing was desperate and wanted to destroy the spacetime gate. But would Qin Feiyang give him the chance? Obviously not. Battle qi surged in his palm, instantly erasing the blood contract in the spacetime gate. Then, he quickly dripped his blood to make it recognize him as its master. After successfully recognizing him as its master, Qin Feiyang sized up the spacetime gate. Then, he looked at Mu Qing and said with a smile, "You sent me a treasure from afar. How do you think I should thank you?" These words were too sarcastic and infuriating. Mu Qing spat out a mouthful of old blood on the spot. "Don't be like this. I'll definitely repay you well." Qin Feiyang smiled mockingly. With a wave of his hand, he sent Mu Qing to the ancient castle. He was worried that he couldn't find a bargaining chip to fight against the Mu family. He didn't expect Mu Qing to deliver himself to his doorstep. In the past, he didn't do anything to Mu Qing because he had a lot of concerns, so he had to think twice before he acted. But now, he had done what he promised the mysterious madam. The main tower had completely fallen out with her. What else did he have to worry about? Nothing. Chapter 1157. After putting away the spacetime gate, Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal. Buzz. After a while, a familiar face appeared. It was Wang Zicheng. Yes, Wang Zicheng was about to bow. Qin Feiyang reached out and stopped him. Seeing this, Wang Zicheng looked suspicious. Wait a minute. After saying this, Qin Feiyang turned off the image crystal and entered the ancient castle. Immediately, he saw Mu Qing lying on the ground, wailing in agony. Her entire body was stained with blood. Fatso was wantonly torturing him. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear, Mu Qing immediately roared, "Qin Feiyang, you let them do this to me. Aren't you afraid that after I escape, I will find someone to kill all of you? If you really had the ability, we wouldn't have escaped from the inland sea. Besides, now that you have fallen into our hands, do you still want to escape? Are you dreaming?" Fatso said disdainfully. Mu Qing roared, "That's because you are lucky. Good luck won't follow you all your life." Qin Feiyang glanced at him and said lightly, "Okay, knock him out." "Okay." Fatso nodded and slapped Mu Qing on the back of his head. Mu Qing fainted on the spot. Qin Feiyang sent a message to Wang Zicheng again. So far, except for the mysterious lady and the other two, no one knew about his relationship with the 10 heroes of Qinghai. So now he couldn't let Mu Qing hear his conversation with Wang Zicheng. Because it was related to the lives of Wang Zicheng and others. If Mu Qing really escaped, he would definitely find ways to take revenge on him. Then Wang Zicheng and others would be doomed. "Greetings, young master." After Wang Zicheng's virtual image appeared, he glanced at Fatso and others, and then reluctantly bowed to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang didn't care. He asked with a smile, "How are you recently?" "It's all right." Wang Zicheng nodded and asked, "What about you?" "It's all right." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Wang Zicheng continued, "Right, there's something that the black monkey and I can't decide on, so we need to ask for your opinion. Speak." Qin Feiyang said. Wang Zicheng said, "Some time ago, Gongsun Bei came to Qinghai to find us." Before Wang Zicheng could finish, Fatso frowned and asked, "Why is he looking for you?" Wang Zicheng said, "He wants us to join the main pagoda and become its disciples." "What?" Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. What the main tower values is nothing more than our talent and potential. They want to recruit us for their own use. To be precise, he wants to nurture us so that we can fight against you. After all, in the younger generation of the Forgotten Continent, there is no one who can compete with you. Wang Zicheng looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "I see." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and asked, "Then what do you think? Aren't you the one who calls the shots now? What else do we dare to think?" Wang Zicheng pouted. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled, then lowered his head and pondered. After a while, his eyes flashed, and he looked up at Wang Zicheng and said, I agree that you all should join the main tower. What? Fatso and the others looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, they want to help me nurture talents, of course I'm happy to do so. Understood. The Qinghai 10 heroes are all our people. The main tower nurtures them, which is the same as helping us nurture them. Boss, you're really treacherous. Fatso said with a sinister smile. Treacherous indeed. Wang Zicheng also had a look of disdain. Qin Feiyang shook his head and looked at Wang Zicheng, saying, since we're going to put on a show, let's go all the way. From now on, you have to treat me as an enemy. Got it? Wang Zicheng nodded. Also, about Dan Wangcai and Viper, if Gongsun Bei asks about them, just say that they're missing. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Wang Zicheng nodded and asked, is there anything else? No, you all have to be careful. Qin Feiyang exhorted and then turned off the image crystal. Fatso looked at Yang Wei and the others lying on the side and said in a deep voice, Boss, we can't be so passive anymore. Never again. Mu Tianyang, the Mu family, the main tower, the great Qin Empire, this is a game. And from this moment on, I'm no longer a chess piece. I'm going to become a chess player in this game. Although I don't have the ability to compete with them now, sooner or later, I'll make them all surrender at my feet and tremble in fear. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and his eyes emitted an aggressive light. Fatso and the others looked at each other and remained silent. However, those incomparably resolute gazes represented their undying hearts. Qin Feiyang looked at Yang Wei and the others and Wolf King, and said to Lu Hong, take care of them. When they wake up, inform me immediately. Lu Hong nodded. Qin Feiyang looked at Fatso and said, I must know Mu Tianyang's next plan, so no matter what method you use, you have to make Mu Qing speak for me. Understood. Fatso smiled coldly. Whoosh. Qin Feiyang flashed and left the castle. He found the snow python again and said, Senior, how much do you know about Mu Tianyang? More or less, I know a little about it. But regarding his matters, don't look for me. Because, as long as he doesn't enter the Forgotten Continent, I won't ask. The snow python said lightly. Understood, Junior will take his leave. Qin Feiyang bowed and saluted. Then, he opened the secret door. The snow python frowned and said, You're leaving just like that? Huh? Qin Feiyang looked at her puzzled. The snow python said, Leave the Mu family's boy here. This, Qin Feiyang was stunned. The snow python said, Last time when I wasn't paying attention, you took away Yang Wei, and I didn't pursue it. Now you want to take away the Mu family's boy. Do you think I'm really easy to talk to? No, no. Qin Feiyang waved his hand again and again. Let me tell you, this time there is no discussion. If you don't hand him over, don't think about going back. The snow python released its aura, shook off Qin Feiyang, and then closed the secret door with a bang, and then used its huge body to block the door. This time Qin Feiyang was stunned. Looking at the snow python's attitude, he really didn't know what to do. Senior, this Mu Qing is very useful to Junior. Can you be merciful and make an exception? After thinking for a while, he could only think of this method, coaxing and pestering. No. The snow python shook its head. Qin Feiyang helplessly said, Then what do you want me to do? The snow python angrily said, You still want to bribe me, don't you understand my words? Qin Feiyang smiled. The snow python frowned, Look at you, today you must take him away? In front of you, Junior doesn't dare to say this. Qin Feiyang rubbed his head and said with a smile, looking silly, Okay. Don't put on an act. You can take him away, but leave your purple gold dragon blood. The snow python impatiently said. Purple gold dragon blood? Qin Feiyang was stunned, and said happily, No problem, it's a small matter. Then he waved his hand, and a battle chi boundary appeared, separating the lake water, and then he cut his finger. The snow python playfully said, I want more than one drop. You can have as much as you want. Qin Feiyang waved his hand indifferently. He had a forthright look on his face. Anyway, he had plenty of purple gold dragon blood in his body. Don't regret it. The snow python laughed, and a light flashed in front of it, and a crystal clear jade appeared. The jade was about the size of a bucket, and there was no flaw on it, as if it was made by nature. Seeing this jade, Qin Feiyang's eyes almost popped out. The snow python said, "Fill it up." "What?" Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded and stammered, "Senior, are you sure you're not joking?" The snow python said, "Do I look like I'm joking? But it's too big. Even if I drain all my blood, it won't be enough." Qin Feiyang put on a long face, feeling extremely wronged. The snow python said with a smile, "It's okay, take your time. Anyway, I have plenty of time." Qin Feiyang cried. However, he had to take Mu Qing away. After all, the snow python in front of him was an existence that could even suppress a fake god. He gritted his teeth, took out the Chang Shui, and cut his wrist. The purple gold dragon blood immediately surged out. But in less than a tenth of it, he began to feel dizzy. He had no choice but to heal the wound on his wrist and enter the castle to refine the blood coagulation pill. Like the life blood pill, the blood coagulation pill could quickly restore the lost blood. And the effect of the blood coagulation pill was better than that of the life blood pill. In addition, it had 7 elixir veins. In less than an hour, Qin Feiyang's lost blood was restored. Time flew. When it was dark, the jade ware in front of him was finally full. Qin Feiyang healed his wound and looked at the big bucket full of purple gold dragon blood. He couldn't help but feel pained. Then he looked up at the snow python and said, "Is this enough?" "Yes, let's go." The snow python didn't make things difficult for Qin Feiyang anymore. It simply let Qin Feiyang go. Qin Feiyang hesitated for a moment and said, "Can I ask, what do you want my blood for?" The snow python frowned. Qin Feiyang shrank his neck and left sensibly. After a while, Qin Feiyang once again arrived in the sky above the Butterfly Valley. He took a blood coagulation pill and looked around. Night fell and cold air filled the air. This place was quiet. Looking at the dim mountains and rivers, Qin Feiyang's eyes were confused. Buzz. After an unknown period of time, the image crystal in his arms rang. When Qin Feiyang took it out, Lu Hong's shadow appeared and said, "Awake." Qin Feiyang was refreshed and entered the castle. Yang Wei, Wolf King, Viper, and Dan Wangcai had all woken up. At this moment, they were leaning against the wall weakly. Qin Feiyang asked, "When Mu Tianyang left, did he say anything to you?" Yang Wei shook his head. Mu Qing, who was beaten black and blue by Fatso, sneered, "If I don't say it, you'll never guess." "Shut up." Fatso slapped Mu Qing, and another bloody palm print appeared on her face. Qin Feiyang turned to Mu Qing and raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked at Fatso and asked, "He still won't say it?" "Fat Lord has tried everything, but this guy just won't say anything." Fat Lord is almost at his wit's end. Chapter 1158. Qin Feiyang's gaze turned cold, his hands forming a seal in front of his chest, and an enslavement seal quickly appeared. Whoosh. Following closely, the enslavement seal entered Mu Qing's sea of consciousness. Ah! The intense pain caused Mu Qing to howl miserably. When the pain disappeared, Mu Qing's face was slightly sinister, and he looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly, saying, "I've already told you, this is useless to me. I don't expect you to tell me now." Qin Feiyang said indifferently, and then left the ancient castle with Wolf King, appearing beside the golden-armored man's corpse. Qin Feiyang said, "Smell it. Do you have the aura of Mu Tianyang and the others?" Wolf King lowered his head and sniffed carefully. A moment later, its eyes lit up as it looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Although a long time has passed and the smell has almost dissipated, I can still smell the smell of that damn monkey." Qin Feiyang's face darkened, and said, "So, they really did it. What do we do now?" Wolf King asked. Qin Feiyang said, "They didn't go to the Forgotten Continent, so they should have gone to the imperial capital." "Impossible. The spirit pagoda is overseen by Old Man Qin. With Mu Tianyang's current strength, running there is simply courting death," Wolf King said. "But don't forget, Mu Tianyang used to be a war god who could contend against the ancestor. Even if his cultivation is not as good as before, his methods are still not something we can imagine," Qin Feiyang said. "So?" Wolf King asked. "I know what you're worried about. If we go to the imperial capital, it's equivalent to walking into a trap. But if they really went to the imperial capital, then the imperial capital must be in chaos now. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Wolf King pondered for a moment, and nodded. That makes sense, then let's go to the imperial capital to take a look. Before we go, we still have to make some preparations. Qin Feiyang glanced at the golden-armored man in front of him, and his eyes suddenly lit up, bringing Yang Wei out of the ancient castle. What's the matter? Yang Wei looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, disguise yourself as him. Yang Wei glanced at him, and instantly understood Qin Feiyang's goal. This is very simple, but there is a problem. What is it? Qin Feiyang asked. Before we came here, he was already dead. We don't even know his cultivation level. But the people in the Emperor Palace would definitely know. What if my cultivation doesn't match his? Wouldn't I be exposed? Yang Wei said. Qin Feiyang nodded and muttered, the Black Iron Army is not as good as the Kirin Army, so whether it's the commander or the deputy commander, their cultivation is not very high. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, looked at Qin Feiyang, Yang Wei, and Wolf King, and said, you guys wait for me here, I'm going to find someone. Who? One man and one wolf were suspicious. Wang Hong. Chapter 1160. I knew you would say that. In fact, I don't want to believe it either, but it's the truth. Qin Feiyang said. Where's the evidence? The Imperial Preceptor said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang said, there's no evidence. You can go to the ruins. Maybe you can find the result you want there. The Imperial Preceptor frowned. But suddenly, a trace of ridicule crawled up his old face, and he said, do you think this old man will be fooled? Let me tell you, no matter what you say today, this old man will not believe it. Hand over Chang Shui and the castle immediately. Qin Feiyang was not surprised. He had already expected such a result. But he could never hand over Chang Shui and the castle. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly, and he looked at the Imperial Preceptor and said, I want to see the Emperor. His Majesty is not someone you can see just because you want to. The Imperial Preceptor sneered. Qin Feiyang said angrily, although you are the Imperial Preceptor, you are also a subject. Do you want to deceive the Emperor? The Imperial Preceptor laughed and said, don't talk nonsense. This is a capital offense, and to be honest, it's not that this old man doesn't want to take you there, but that His Majesty doesn't want to see you. No, His Majesty wants to see him very much. Suddenly, a hoarse voice sounded. Before the voice died away, a white-haired old man descended on the attic. It was Elder Qin who took back the pagoda. There was also a man and a wolf standing beside Elder Qin. It was Wolf King and Yang Wei. What's going on? Seeing this, Qin Feiyang was very surprised. Why would Wolf King and Yang Wei be with Elder Qin? At the same time, seeing Elder Qin suddenly appear, the Imperial Preceptor's eyebrows flashed with a trace of hostility. Elder Qin glanced at Qin Feiyang and Wang Hong, then looked at the Imperial Preceptor and said lightly, Imperial Preceptor, please let them go. You're lucky. The Imperial Preceptor glanced at Qin Feiyang, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his old eyes. Qin Feiyang stretched his muscles and pointed at Wang Hong. And him. The State Preceptor snorted coldly. He deceived the Emperor and abused his power for personal gain. His crimes are unforgivable. I will execute him on the spot as a warning to others. No. Qin Feiyang bellowed. However, it was too late. The Grand Tutor squeezed his hand and Wang Hong's throat and neck were broken on the spot. Bastard! Qin Feiyang glared and rushed over like a madman. State Preceptor snorted and threw Wang Hong to Qin Feiyang as if he was throwing garbage. But at the same time, a strand of false god's power surged out from his palm and entered Wang Hong's psyche ocean, crushing Wang Hong's soul in an instant. Qin Feiyang rushed up and hugged Wang Hong. He squatted in the air and looked at Wang Hong's pale face. He anxiously shouted, "Senior, wake up." However, Wang Hong was already dead. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come to find you. I'm the one who killed you. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Qin Feiyang tightly hugged the corpse that was gradually turning cold as he blamed himself in his heart. Above, Wolf King's eyes were also filled with killing intent and anger. Boom! All of a sudden, a monstrous killing intent rushed out from Qin Feiyang's body. A bloody kill word appeared between his eyebrows. He landed on the ground and placed Wang Hong on the ground. He looked up at Old Man Qin and questioned, "The Emperor ordered that no one is allowed to harm anyone related to me for 10 years. Now that State Preceptor is doing this, isn't it the same as disobeying the Emperor's order?" Old Man Qin raised his eyebrows and looked at the State Preceptor. He then looked down at Qin Feiyang and said, "His Majesty did say so. However, Wang Hong is a subject of the Empire. He knew that you had returned but did not report it. This is a crime of deceiving the Emperor. It is understandable that State Preceptor will execute him on the spot." Qin Feiyang clenched his hands tightly. His nails had already sunk into his flesh and dragon blood dripped down. The State Preceptor sneered. Wolf King said, "Little Qin Zi, don't be impulsive." Yang Wei also secretly advised, "Yes, revenge is a dish best served cold. Don't do anything stupid." Qin Feiyang was silent. His whole body was surrounded by blood. This was killing intent. But in the end, he loosened his hands and the kill word between his eyebrows gradually disappeared. He looked down at Wang Hong and whispered, "Senior, I won't let you die in vain." Hearing this, the State Preceptor sneered. "Let's go," Old Man Qin urged. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Accompanied by a loud noise, a deep pit appeared on the ground. Then he held Wang Hong and gently put him into the pit. Plop! Immediately, he knelt in front of Wang Hong and kowtowed 3 times. He said word by word, "If I don't avenge you, I, Qin Feiyang, am not a human." Hearing this oath, the smile on the State Preceptor's face disappeared. In terms of strength, he was much stronger than Qin Feiyang. But looking at Qin Feiyang's eyes at this moment, he couldn't help but feel inexplicably flustered and afraid. Swish! Qin Feiyang stood up and buried Wang Hong. Then he flew to Old Man Qin and said, "Let's go." Old Man Qin nodded. He waved his hand and opened a portal. Then he turned around and led 2 people and 1 wolf into the portal. The State Preceptor raised his eyebrows and followed in. Butterfly Valley. Beside the teleportation altar, a group of people appeared one after another. Old Man Qin raised his arm. Battle Qi gushed out of his fingertips and flowed into the teleportation altar. Qin Feiyang looked at the teleportation altar and secretly asked Wolf King and Yang Wei, "Why is Old Man Qin here?" "We don't know either. He suddenly appeared in Butterfly Valley just now. We couldn't escape even if we wanted to, but it's a blessing in disguise. He saved your life." Wolf King and Yang Wei secretly transmitted their voices. They were both terrified. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. It seemed that Old Man Qin had already begun to investigate the State Preceptor. This was indeed a good thing for him. Buzz! The teleportation altar finally opened. Old Man Qin said, "Let's go." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent Yang Wei and Wolf King to the ancient castle. Then, he stepped onto the teleportation altar alone. To this, Old Man Qin only frowned and didn't say anything. Pagoda. Qin Feiyang, Old Man Qin, and the State Preceptor appeared one after another. Next, Qin Feiyang followed behind the 2 of them. Walking out of the pagoda, he scanned the familiar mountain range in front of him. Although stepping into the imperial capital was equivalent to entering a cage, at this moment, he was fearless. Old Man Qin turned to look at the State Preceptor and smiled. State Preceptor must be tired from running around in the spiritual state. It must be very tiring. Please go back and rest. Obviously, he was sending the State Preceptor away. The State Preceptor said indifferently, "Qin Feiyang is a felon. I must personally escort him to His Majesty." State Preceptor is really considerate. Old Man Qin chuckled and opened the teleportation gate. He retreated to the side and stretched out his hand. State Preceptor, please. The State Preceptor glanced at him coldly and stepped into the teleportation gate. Qin Feiyang was about to follow in. But suddenly, Old Man Qin grabbed him and shook his head. This teleportation gate isn't the one that leads to Bright Sky Palace. Qin Feiyang was suspicious. It's better to be wary of some people. Old Man Qin said meaningfully. He opened another teleportation gate and led Qin Feiyang in. Outside the Imperial City, in the sky above a certain mountain, an old man in white appeared out of thin air. It was the State Preceptor. Looking at the mountains and rivers below, the State Preceptor was stunned. Wasn't he going to see His Majesty? Why was he here? Damn it. The next moment, he realized that he had been tricked and hurriedly turned around. As expected, there was no trace of Qin Feiyang and Old Man Qin. Old Dog Qin, how dare you trick me? I'm not done with you today. He was furious. He opened the teleportation gate again and rushed in like lightning. At the same time, Bright Sky Palace. This palace that was once destroyed by Qin Feiyang was not abandoned because of this. Instead, it was more glorious and imposing than before. In a pavilion, a child who looked like a porcelain doll was holding an ancient scroll and reciting a poem that he wasn't familiar with. Beside him, a middle-aged couple sat side by side, looking at the child with a gratified smile on their faces. Swish. Suddenly, the void shook and two figures appeared in the pavilion. It was Qin Feiyang and Old Man Qin. Greetings, Your Majesty, Empress, and Little Prince. Old Man Qin bowed. That's right. The three people in the pavilion were the current Emperor, Empress, and Little Prince Qin Haotian. The arrival of Qin Feiyang and Old Man Qin also interrupted the Little Prince's recitation. He raised his head, revealing a childish face, looking at Qin Feiyang and Old Man Qin. Brother, at a glance, he recognized Qin Feiyang. He immediately put down the ancient scroll in his hand and ran towards Qin Feiyang. Seeing this, the Empress's expression changed. She hurriedly got up, hugged the little prince, and hid behind the Emperor as if she had seen a devil. At the same time, the Emperor also raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang, frowning slightly. Qin Feiyang said coldly, Old Man Qin, it seems that he doesn't want to see me. Old Man Qin smiled bitterly. His Majesty actually didn't know that you were coming. The reason why I said this is because I want to save you from the Imperial Preceptor. Save? Qin Feiyang sneered. The Emperor waved to the Empress and Little Prince. You guys go back first. The Empress had been waiting for this sentence. As soon as she heard the Emperor's words, she immediately carried the Little Prince and ran to the palace not far away. It was as if, in her eyes, Qin Feiyang was a demon that ate people without spitting out their bones. However, the little prince was a little unwilling. He kept shouting that he wanted to play with his brother. But the Empress would definitely not listen to him. The scene when the little prince fell into Qin Feiyang's hands last time was still vivid in her mind. After entering the palace, she not only closed the door tightly, but also asked the guards outside to guard strictly, not allowing Qin Feiyang to take half a step in. The Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and said, even the mother of a country is so afraid of you. Do you feel a sense of accomplishment? I just feel sad. Qin Feiyang said lightly. You? The Emperor asked. What's sad about me? The sad person I'm talking about is you. As the Emperor of a country, you have a lot of wives and concubines, but in the end, only one son is going to send you off. Isn't that sad? Qin Feiyang sneered. The Emperor frowned and snorted coldly. Even if I only have one son, I don't need you to pity him. Pity you? Haha, Qin Feiyang couldn't help laughing and said, you don't say, one day in the future, it may really be me who will send you off. His words were filled with a piercing coldness. What kind of person was the Emperor? How could he not understand such words? Obviously. Chapter 1161. The Emperor's face was as dark as water. Can't we sit down peacefully and have a good talk? He asked. That will never happen. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Old Man Qin couldn't help but sigh as he watched the father and son arguing with each other. The Emperor also lost his patience and said, then tell me, What is your purpose in coming to me? If it's for your mother, then don't say it. There's no room for negotiation. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed fiercely. I'm here to tell you that Mu Tianyang is back. What? The emperor's face changed. Old man Qin was also surprised. He stared at Qin Feiyang and asked, is this true? Qin Feiyang said, it's up to you to believe it or not. The emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and suddenly said, shouldn't you hate me for what I did to you? Why are you here to tell me this news? Qin Feiyang said, I'm doing this for the people of the world, not for you. The people of the world, the emperor muttered to himself as if he was thinking of something in the past. There was a complicated expression in his eyes. After a while, the emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and shook his head. You're really like the ancestor. Unfortunately, you're not the ancestor. The ancestor he was talking about was the first emperor of the Great Qin Empire, the Qin Emperor. The ancestor created a huge empire and left countless legends and miracles. Of course, I can't compare to the ancestor. But, in this world, everyone has the right to talk about me except you. Do you understand? Qin Feiyang shouted in a stern voice. Old man Qin frowned. No matter what, he's your father. You shouldn't talk about him like that. Father? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Is there a father who abandons his wife and son? No. Besides, I've already returned the bloodline power he gave me. What else can't I say? The emperor couldn't help but clench his fists. Obviously, he was furious. Life is like this. Once you take that step, you will never be able to turn back. Back then, when you crippled my cultivation and drove me out of the imperial capital, you should have known that such a day would come. Qin Feiyang said coldly. The emperor couldn't hold it in any longer and roared, lock him up in the prison immediately. Without my order, no one is allowed to visit him, Your Majesty. But at this moment, the imperial preceptor came in anger. He gloomily glanced at old man Qin, then looked at the emperor and bowed. Your Majesty, this child has become a great threat. We can't let him live any longer. I suggest that we execute him on the spot. The emperor clenched his fists and nodded. All right, execute him on the spot. Qin Feiyang shrugged. It was not the first or second time that the emperor had ordered him to be killed. He no longer cared. But, since he didn't die the last time, he swore that no matter what difficulties he encountered in the future, he would try his best to survive. This was not a small matter and had to be treated carefully. Humph. This old thing, he won't be satisfied until he kills me. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. The Hell God Hound hesitated and said, "That. This emperor wants to ask, is that imperial tutor very strong?" "Nonsense, he's the teacher of the current emperor. Do you think he's strong or not?" Tan Wu rolled his eyes at it. "Then how strong is he? If he's not that strong, we'll think of a way to kill him directly," the Hell God Hound said. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other. He actually wanted to kill the imperial tutor? This guy was really a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger. Tan Wu said, "Listen carefully, the current imperial tutor is a false god." "What? A false god?" The Hell God Hound's eyes widened, filled with shock. Tan Wu said, "Let's talk about it now. Do you still want to kill him?" Just pretend that you didn't hear what I said just now." The Hell God Hound laughed dryly. "What a joke. Wasn't it courting death to provoke a false god?" Tan Wu rolled his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, "If I'm caught by the imperial tutor, I'm fine, but you'll definitely be doomed. If he wants to catch me, it won't be that simple." Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. "What do you mean?" Tan Wu was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, "Actually, the imperial tutor's arrival is exactly what I'm looking forward to." "What do you mean?" Tan Wu was surprised. After Ren Duxing was possessed by a wisp of Mu Qianyang's divine consciousness, his methods are very terrifying. With the strength of the few of us, it's not enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Therefore, I need someone stronger to deal with him. And this imperial tutor is undoubtedly the best candidate. Qin Feiyang sneered, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Yang Wei suddenly said, "I understand, your goal is to let them fight each other." "Yes. If I didn't want people to know my whereabouts, I wouldn't have stood there openly in the capital of He province. And I wouldn't have let you directly use your true face to inquire about the coordinates of the demonic Dragon Mountain range." Qin Feiyang said. "I see." Yang Wei suddenly understood, shook his head and said with a smile, "You deliberately left clues to let them find our whereabouts, and then led them to the demonic Dragon Mountain range." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, "These two people are not good people. Let them fight first, and then we'll come out and reap the benefits in the end." "Brilliant." Tan Wu gave a thumbs up. As soon as he entered He province, he began to make arrangements. It seemed that this person was already unwilling to be a chess piece. It was really exciting. "We'll see a good show soon. Let's go," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yang Wei also smiled playfully and continued on his way with 2 people and 1 beast. At the same time, outside the capital, in the canyon. Chapter 1169. Time flew. Night fell again. The demonic Dragon Mountain range was particularly quiet at night. Only the occasional sound of insects could be heard. Whoosh! A stream of light cut through the sky and landed on a mountain peak. It was Qin Feiyang and his group. After landing on the mountain peak, the group immediately turned around and looked at the void behind them. From afar, they could faintly see a blurry light figure rapidly approaching them. Yang Wei frowned. "Why is there only one person? Is it not the imperial tutor?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he whispered, "The demonic Dragon Mountain range is so big, they don't know where we are going. They will definitely split up to find us." While they were talking, that light figure was getting closer and closer. Qin Feiyang and the rest also restrained their auras to the extreme. Finally, Qin Feiyang saw the person's true face. It was a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He had a strong body and was 1.9 meters tall. The aura exuding from his body was extremely strong. "Can you see through his cultivation?" Tan Wu asked. Yang Wei shook his head. "No." Qin Feiyang suddenly said, "His cultivation is definitely not lower than a 5-star combat emperor." "What?" The 2 men and 1 beast's expression changed. Swoosh! Qin Feiyang waved his hand and led the 2 men and 1 beast into the ancient castle. Not long after they entered the ancient castle, the middle-aged man did not stop at all and swept across the sky above the mountain peak. Inside the ancient castle. Hello everyone. Tan Wu smiled and greeted Fatso and the rest. Other than the double-winged snow eagle, Yang Wei, Phantom Snake Emperor, Viper and Dan Wangtsai, everyone was considered old acquaintances. So, Fatso and the rest also smiled and nodded at Tan Wu. So strong. When he noticed Viper and Dan Wangtsai, Tan Wu's pupils constricted slightly. Then, he looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "They are also your subordinates?" "Friends," Qin Feiyang said. Tan Wu was slightly taken aback and said emotionally, "Your foundation is getting stronger and stronger." Qin Feiyang sighed, "It's a pity that my own strength is still not enough to bring it to the table." Tan Wu smiled faintly and said, "With your cultivation speed, catching up to them, even surpassing them, is just a matter of time." Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Tan Wu said, "Oh right, how did you determine that person's cultivation just now?" "The symbol on his chest," Qin Feiyang said, a cold light flashing in his eyes. "Logo?" Tan Wu, Yang Wei, and the Hell God Hound looked at each other. They could see a trace of doubt in each other's eyes. Qin Feiyang said, "There's a black skull symbol on his chest." Tan Wu nodded. He had also noticed this. Qin Feiyang said, "That's the symbol of the inner hall of the Law Enforcement Hall." Inner hall? Tan Wu was bewildered. Having been in the Divine Hall for so long, he naturally had a good understanding of the Law Enforcement Hall. The Law Enforcement Hall was personally controlled by the state preceptor. Every person inside was rather powerful. And the Law Enforcement Hall was also the place that all the disciples of the Divine Hall did not want to go to the most. Because once they entered the Law Enforcement Hall, it would definitely be a situation of 9 deaths and 1 life. But he had never heard of the inner hall before. Those law enforcers that you usually see are only people from the outer hall. And the law enforcers of the inner hall are even more mysterious than the law enforcers of the outer hall. They never easily appear in front of people. Because they are death warriors secretly groomed by the emperor and the state preceptor. Each one of them is a 1 in 10,000 ruthless character. They will only appear when there's a particularly major emergency. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. "There's actually such a group of people." Tan Wu was tongue-tied. Qin Feiyang said, "This muddy water in the imperial capital is deeper than you imagine." Tan Wu asked, "Then are they the emperor's trusted aides or the state preceptor's trusted aides?" Under the heavens, all lands belong to the emperor. Logically speaking, everything in the Great Qin Empire should belong to the emperor, including these law enforcers of the inner hall. In the past, I thought so too. But now, after experiencing so many things, I've changed some of my views. I feel that whether it's the people from the outer hall or the law enforcement hall, they should all be the state preceptor's trusted aide." Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Tan Wu said in shock, "You suspect that the state preceptor wants to usurp the throne?" "Who knows?" Qin Feiyang shrugged his shoulders. Tan Wu took a deep look at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Then what are the conditions to enter the inner hall?" Qin Feiyang said, "First of all, cultivation. The lowest is a 5-star combat emperor." Tan Wu was secretly speechless. He really did not expect that there was such a mysterious department hidden in the imperial capital. It was so strong that it made people afraid. Qin Feiyang's gaze flickered slightly. He looked at Tan Wu and said, "I think you should go back." "En?" Tan Wu raised his eyebrows. "Don't misunderstand. I'm not looking down on you. I'm just afraid of implicating you. If the state preceptor finds out that you're with me, do you know what the consequences will be? Moreover, the people he brought this time are from the law enforcement hall's inner hall. I really don't have the confidence to protect your safety," Qin Feiyang said. Tan Wu's expression was uncertain. The Hell God Hound said, "Hey, hey, hey. He's right. If you stay now, not only will you not be able to help him, you will only drag him down. Why do you care?" Tan Wu glared at it angrily. Perhaps the imperial tutor and the others had already entered deeper into the Magic Dragon Mountain range. So, Chapter 1170. While Qin Feiyang was frantically stacking his cultivation base, in the deepest part of the demonic Dragon Mountain range. A group of people was standing in front of a huge stone stele. The one in the lead was Ren Duxing, Dongqing, Zhongjin, and the 4 sacred beasts stood respectfully on the left and right sides. The 3 people and 4 sacred beasts stared at the stone stele in front of them with heavy expressions. That stone stele was several hundred zhong tall, its entire body as white as jade. From afar, it looked like a giant sword that pierced the sky, and on the stone stele, there were several lines of word. Demonic Dragon Mountain Range's hinterland, intruders, die. Every word seemed to be made of fresh blood, exuding a shocking murderous aura. Behind the stone tablet was an endless stretch of mountains and rivers. But inside the mountain range, there was no vegetation, no fierce beasts, not even a bug. There were only piles of white bones, dead silence. Zhongjin retracted his gaze and looked respectfully at Ren Duxing, asking, "My lord, where did Dongqing get that battle sword in her hand?" "It's here." Ren Duxing pointed at the stone stele and said. Then, he leaped into the air and stood on top of the stone stele. Zhongjin, Dongqing, and the 4 sacred beasts exchanged a glance and also leaped into the air, landing beside Ren Duxing. Immediately, they saw a crack in the middle of the stone stele. Ren Duxing said, "That battle sword was stuck in that crack in the past." Dongqing asked suspiciously, "Who left it behind?" "I don't know." Ren Duxing shook his head. Zhongjin was puzzled. "Then why are we here this time?" Ren Duxing said, "After I escaped, I came to this place. There is a giant mountain in the depths of the hinterland, and there is a cloud of black fog floating on top of it. The aura emitted by that black fog even scared me." "What?" Zhongjin, Dongqing, and the 4 sacred beasts paled. "Of course. If I was at my peak, that black fog shouldn't be a threat to me," Ren Duxing said again. Zhongjin asked, "Then, did you see what was inside that black fog?" "No. I couldn't get close." Ren Duxing shook his head. "Not even this sword?" With a wave of her hand, Dongqing summoned her crimson sword. Ren Duxing said, "I've tried, but the power of the sword can only help me reach the foot of the mountain, not the peak." Dongqing said, "Do you mean that there might be some kind of treasure at the top of the mountain?" "It's not a supreme treasure. It's a demon." Ren Duxing's eyes sparkled. "Demon?" Zhongjin and the others looked at each other. "Yes. There is a mysterious power that can steal the life force of living beings in the hinterland. As for this power, it came from that black fog," Ren Duxing said. "Plunder the life force of living beings." Zhongjin and the other 2, as well as the 4 saint beasts, turned pale with fright. Chapter 1171. Roar. Rumble. At the same time, Qin Feiyang's cultivation had already stacked to the level of a 3-star war emperor. His entire body was surrounded by a bloody aura, as if a god of death had descended to the world. The terrifying aura caused the fierce beasts to tremble in fear. Qin Feiyang said, "The murderous aura is too strong, I can't control it anymore. I have to let the inner demons out." "All right." Yang Wei nodded. Qin Feiyang closed his eyes and his consciousness entered his inner world. The inner demons had long been prepared, because he knew that Qin Feiyang was unable to control the kill character tactic. Qin Feiyang said, "Please. Don't worry." The inner demons laughed and instantly disappeared from his inner world. Outside, Qin Feiyang suddenly opened his eyes, and 2 shocking bloody lights burst out from his eyes. At this moment, the murderous aura around his body became even stronger, and his eyes were filled with ruthlessness and bloodthirst. The inner demons turned to look at Yang Wei. Yang Wei instinctively felt a sense of fear in his heart. "Old brat, there's nothing else for you to do here. Go to the castle and play." The inner demons laughed arrogantly. Without waiting for Yang Wei to react, he directly sent Yang Wei to the castle. Immediately after, he suddenly turned around and looked at the deepest part of the magic Dragon Mountain range. He laughed wildly, This time, I will kill to my heart's content, haha. He took a step forward, and his murderous aura turned into millions of strands and entered the mountain stream below. Boom. Crack. Roar. For a moment, the mountains below collapsed and the ground cracked, and the fierce beasts howled miserably. He was like a god of death, drowned in blood. Wherever he went, not a single person was left alive, leaving behind a mess. And his cultivation was like a volcanic eruption, crazily soaring. Hinterland. The dark red giant peak was like a blood-sucking magic sword, and its baleful aura soared to the sky. Not to mention getting close, just looking at it from afar was enough to make one's hair stand on end. At this moment, Ren Duxing, together with Zhongjin and the other two and the four holy beasts, had already climbed halfway up the giant peak. The stone staircase was bumpy and had been there for many years. The 3 humans and 4 beasts walked on the stone steps and could feel the rich ancient aura. Zhongjin said, based on the current situation, reaching the top of the mountain shouldn't be a problem. Ren Duxing nodded, a trace of inexplicable excitement in his eyes. Looking at the peak of the mountain, he was also filled with longing. 1 step. 2 steps. 3 steps. After about half an hour, the peak of the mountain finally appeared in front of them. The desire in Ren Duxing's eyes grew even stronger. He quickened his pace. Seeing this, Zhongjin's group and the 4 holy beasts couldn't help but rush forward. 10 breaths later, finally, the group stepped onto the last step and stood at the peak of the mountain. The mysterious power became more and more terrifying, and the barrier formed by the 2 divine artifacts began to shake. The peak of the mountain was as smooth as a mirror, as if it had been carved by a giant axe. At the center of the mountain peak, there was a cloud of black fog floating in the air. The black fog was surging, filled with a demonic aura, as if there was a peerless beast lurking inside, giving people a great sense of crisis. The moment they reached the peak of the mountain, Ren Duxing didn't look around but directly looked at the black fog. Dongqing looked at the black fog and then looked at Ren Duxing. Her eyes flashed slightly, and she said respectfully, "Lord, this subordinate has something to ask, but I don't know if it's appropriate." "Ask." Ren Duxing said. "When we were about to reach the peak of the mountain, your eyes became different from before. This subordinate wants to ask, did you already know what was inside?" Dongqing said. "Yes." Ren Duxing nodded. "What is it?" Dongqing was surprised. Ren Duxing stared at the black fog and said word by word, "A dragon claw." "Dragon claw?" Dongqing and Zhongjin looked at each other, and the surprise in their eyes grew stronger. Dragon claw, at the same time. The 4 holy beasts also fell into deep thought. Suddenly, the holy monkey seemed to think of something and asked, "Lord, could it be the dragon claw of that dragon?" "Yes." Ren Duxing nodded. Gasp. The 4 holy beasts suddenly gasped, and when they looked at the black fog again, their eyes were full of fear. But at the same time, there was a strong sense of greed. "Follow me closely." Ren Duxing's eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice, and then walked toward the black fog. The 4 holy beasts followed closely behind Ren Duxing, looking extremely nervous. Seeing this, Zhongjin and Dongqing looked at each other and couldn't help but be vigilant. One had to know. The 4 holy beasts used to be at the pseudo-god level. Even they were so cautious, it could be seen that the so-called dragon claw was definitely not ordinary terrifying. The peak of the mountain was not big, only about 100 feet in diameter. The radius was only 50 feet. For Ren Duxing and the others, the distance of 50 feet was just a step. But at this moment, they were especially careful, as if they were walking on thin ice. 40 feet. 30 feet. 20 feet. 10 feet. A distance of 30 meters was undoubtedly a short distance for them. It could even be said that it was easy to get. The excitement on Ren Duxing's face was also undisguised. 50 feet, 30 feet, 10 feet, half a meter. Finally, they walked to the front of the black fog, and there was only a distance of half a meter between them. It was within reach. However, the boundary that protected them also shook more violently, but there was no sign of it breaking. Chapter 1173. The stone tablet was hundreds of feet tall, standing between heaven and earth like a towering mountain. After retreating from the hinterland, Ren Duxing stood above the stone tablet, looking at the giant peak with flickering eyes. Zhongjin's eyes flashed slightly, and he suggested, "My lord, why don't we go to Lu Xingchen and get the space divine item?" Dongqing suddenly said, "Yes, the space divine item is also a divine artifact. Together with the demonic crystal and the battle sword, there are 3 divine artifacts. Maybe they can block the erosion of the black fog." Ren Duxing shook his head and said, "Although the space divine item is a divine artifact, it doesn't have much power." In other words, Lu Xingchen's space divine item didn't have much of a defense against the erosion of the black fog. Hearing this, Zhongjin frowned. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and asked, "What about your divine bones?" Ren Duxing was silent. "What do you mean?" Zhongjin and Dongqing looked at each other. They didn't understand what Ren Duxing was thinking. Holy Monkey glanced at Ren Duxing and said angrily, "There are some things you don't understand. Don't make suggestions." The two looked at it in confusion. The owner of this dragon claw was stronger than my lord when he was alive. Although he only has 1 dragon claw now, my lord is now weak. Although my lord's divine bones are the body of the god of war, he can't exert his peak strength without the divine soul and divine blood. So, even if my lord's divine sense enters the divine bones, he can't shake this dragon claw. Holy Monkey said. Holy Eagle said in a deep voice, "This is only the second thing. The most important thing is that if my lord's divine bones are damaged, it will undoubtedly be more difficult for my lord to recover his peak strength in the future." Stronger than my lord at his peak. Zhongjin and Dongqing were dumbfounded. Yes. The 4 divine beasts nodded. Zhongjin said, "What kind of monster is it?" "Monster." Holy Monkey was stunned and sighed. "This name is indeed suitable for it." After that, it fell silent. The other 3 divine beasts also fell silent. Seeing this, Zhong and Jin looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. But seeing that the 4 great sacred beasts refused to say anything, they didn't dare to continue asking. Time slowly passed. After an unknown period of time, Ren Duxing clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "I must get my hands on the dragon claw today. I'll go to the Imperial City immediately to look for Lu Xingchen and retrieve my divine bone. My lord, this is no small matter. You must think twice." "That's right. Besides, Lu Xingchen is currently in the imperial capital, and the teleportation altar is located in the mountain behind the palace. With old man Qin guarding it, we can't enter." The 4 great saint beasts were startled, and they hurriedly replied, "Don't you know what to do?" Ren Duxing shouted. The 4 holy beasts shrunk their necks and lowered their heads in silence. If there was only 1 elder Qin in the imperial capital, they would have dared to take a risk. However, there were other false gods in the imperial capital. With their current strength, entering the imperial capital was simply courting death. "I'll go." Suddenly, Zhongjin gritted his teeth and said, The 4 holy beasts looked at him in surprise. Zhongjin said, "Qin Feiyang has snuck into the imperial capital many times without being discovered. I believe that I have the ability to do the same." Dongqing frowned slightly and said, "It seems that you're going to compete with Qin Feiyang until the end." Zhongjin sneered and said, "Every dog has its day. I've endured humiliation for so long. It's time for me to rise." "Very good." Ren Duxing nodded and was very impressed. He waved his hand and said, "Go, I'll wait for you here." Zhongjin opened the teleportation gate and walked in confidently. Looking at Zhongjin's back, Dongqing raised her eyebrows and turned to Ren Duxing. She asked suspiciously, "My lord, can't you and the divine bone sense each other? Why did you let Zhongjin go?" Ren Duxing said, "The divine bone and I can sense each other, but it's only limited to the 9 provinces. Now that the divine bone is in the imperial capital, I can't sense his location, let alone contact him." Dongqing nodded her head in understanding. The Holy Monkey said, "My lord, I still have to advise you to reconsider." Ren Duxing waved his hand and said, "Don't say anything more. If I don't take the dragon claw this time, it will definitely fall into Qin Feiyang's hands again. The holy monkey was puzzled. He doesn't know that we're here, and he doesn't know that the dragon claw is here. How will it fall into his hands? Ren Duxing put away the demonic crystal and then grabbed the battle sword. He said, because I told him that this battle sword was found in the magical dragon mountains. With his suspicious personality, he will definitely come to the magical dragon mountains to check it out sooner or later. The holy monkey raised its eyebrows. Isn't his lord being too paranoid? Whoosh. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Someone's coming? It can't be Qin Feiyang, can it? The holy monkey turned around, its eyes full of surprise. At the same time, Ren Duxing, Dongqing, and the other 3 holy beasts also frowned and looked up. They saw streaks of light flashing through the air in the distance. The leader was an old man. He had white hair and a white beard, and he looked like an immortal. But at this moment, the old man's eyes were extremely gloomy, giving off a bone-chilling coldness. Behind the old man was a group of black-clothed men. They were all serious and their eyes were as sharp as blades. It's him. Dongqing's pupils suddenly shrank when she saw the old man. Who is it?